Hello and welcome to Fluent English Journey. This is a place where we don't just improve your English skills, but also explore deeper ideas that affect our lives. I'm really happy you're here today because this episode is a special one. It sits right at the meeting point of language learning, self-awareness, and understanding your emotions. If you're someone who wants to grow, whether in your career, your relationships, or just as a person, this topic will feel very relevant. Today, we're going to talk about something simple but very powerful: understanding your needs, wishes, and expectations. At first, these words might sound like they belong in a self-help book or a psychology class. But actually, they are part of our daily lives. Every choice you make, every conversation you have, every moment of stress or peace, they all connect to these three things inside you. Yet, most of us rarely stop to ask ourselves what really drives us. So, think for a moment, when was the last time you asked yourself, what do I truly need right now? What am I hoping for? What am I expecting from myself, from others, from life? It's easy to go through life on autopilot. We get caught up with work, family, studies, or long-term goals. But if we don't slow down and check in with ourselves, it's easy to get swept away by other people's expectations or chase goals that don't really matter to us. That's when frustration grows, when stress and burnout appear, and when we feel like we are working hard but not really satisfied. From a language learning perspective, understanding these ideas helps you talk about your emotions more clearly. It moves you beyond simple words like "I'm tired" or "I'm fine." You can start using more meaningful expressions like "I'm feeling disconnected," "I wish I could slow down," "I'm trying to manage my expectations." These are the kinds of phrases that fluent speakers use, especially in personal or professional situations. If your goal is to communicate clearly and authentically, learning this kind of vocabulary is very important. Culture also plays a role. Different societies view needs, wishes, and expectations differently. In some places, talking openly about personal desires or setting boundaries might be seen as selfish. In others, it's encouraged. So thinking about these ideas also helps you reflect on your own cultural beliefs and decide which ones serve you and which ones you might want to rethink. As we go through today's episode, I want you to be both a language learner and a life learner. Be curious, not just about the words and expressions I'm teaching, but also about what's happening inside you as you listen. You can pause, take notes, or reflect if you want. If a phrase or idea feels meaningful, remember it. There's no need to rush. This is not about mastering grammar. It's about mastering understanding. By the end of this episode, my hope is that you will not only improve your English, but also gain a clearer sense of your needs, wishes, and expectations, and see how they shape the way you live your life. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's start exploring these three important ideas: needs, wishes, and expectations. Let's take a moment to pause and think about three important words: needs, wishes, and expectations. We use these words all the time, often without really thinking about what they mean. They come up in everyday conversations, in moments of conflict, in our goals, and even in our regrets. But when we stop and really explore each one, not just as an idea, but in terms of how it affects our lives, something interesting happens. Things become clearer. We start to understand ourselves a little better. So, let's start with the most basic of the three: needs. A need is something essential. It's something you truly cannot live well without. And I'm not just talking about food, water, or shelter, though, of course, those are important. I'm also talking about emotional and psychological needs. The need to feel safe. The need to feel seen. The need to belong somewhere. Needs are like oxygen. You might not notice them when they're being met, but the moment they aren't, it becomes impossible to ignore. If you often feel exhausted, anxious, disconnected, or on edge, there's a good chance one of your core needs isn't being met. And here's an important point: unmet needs don't just disappear. They show up in other ways. Maybe you feel irritable or you procrastinate. Maybe there's a vague sense that something is off, even if everything seems fine on the outside. That's why understanding your needs isn't just helpful, it's essential. Needs are the foundation of everything else. Without that foundation, life can feel unstable, no matter how successful or impressive things look from the outside. Next, let's talk about wishes. If needs are like oxygen, wishes are like stars in the night sky. They give us direction, inspiration, and hope. Sometimes, they even seem far away or out of reach. A wish is something you long for, dream about, or imagine. It's not essential for survival, but it adds joy, meaning, and possibility to life. You might wish for a career change, for more travel, for deeper connections, or for more confidence. Wishes speak to the part of us that looks beyond the present and imagines something different. But here's something important: not every wish becomes a goal. Some are quiet and gentle, some are loud and persistent. Some may stay in our hearts for years without being fully acted on, and that's okay. Wishing is not a weakness. In fact, it often shows what matters most to you. The tricky part comes when we confuse a wish with a need. For example, we might think we need approval, or we need success to feel worthy. That's when life gets confusing. It becomes hard to tell what is truly essential and what is simply desired. Finally, let's explore expectations. Expectations are sometimes the most complicated of the three. They aren't just about what you want or need. Expectations are often about what you assume should happen, whether consciously or unconsciously. They are shaped by your past experiences, your culture, your upbringing, and your relationships. Expectations are like an invisible script running in the background of your mind. You may not even notice them until reality doesn't match what you imagined. Then, suddenly, you feel disappointed, frustrated, or let down. Understanding expectations, just like needs and wishes, is important because they influence your emotions, your choices, and the way you relate to others. They show you not just what you want, but also what your mind has been quietly telling you to expect, sometimes without even realizing it. Think about this for a moment. Have you ever expected someone to reply to your message quickly and felt upset when they didn't? Or hoped a situation would go smoothly and felt disappointed when it didn't? Expectations often sneak in quietly, shaping how we react before we even have a chance to think. Expectations aren't bad, they actually help us plan, prepare, and navigate life. But they can become rigid or unrealistic, and that's when they turn into a trap. When that happens, we measure our happiness not by what is real, but by what we assumed should happen. So let's tie all three ideas together. Needs are what sustain you. They're essential for your survival and well-being. Wishes are what inspire you. They give you direction, hope, and a sense of possibility. Expectations are what you predict or sometimes demand from life. They are shaped by past experiences, social norms, or assumptions. Sometimes these three overlap, and that's where confusion begins. For example, you might expect appreciation at work, but is that expectation coming from a deep need for recognition and respect, or just a passing wish? You might wish to be in a relationship, but is that wish masking a need for emotional safety? Or is it influenced by society's idea of where you should be in life? The more you learn to distinguish between needs, wishes, and expectations, the more empowered you become. When you know your true needs, you can prioritize wisely. When you know your genuine wishes, you can dream without guilt or pressure. When you recognize your expectations as assumptions rather than facts, you can respond to life with more flexibility and compassion, both for yourself and others. From an English learning perspective, notice how many abstract nouns we've used: belonging, safety, recognition, disappointment, fulfillment. These aren't things you can touch, but they describe real emotional experiences. Learning words like these lets you express your inner world. You're not just talking about what you do or like, you're learning to communicate what you feel, hope for, and expect. That's powerful. Now, take a moment. Can you identify one current need, one honest wish, and one hidden expectation in your life right now? Don't rush. Sometimes clarity begins not with the answers, but with asking better questions. Let's go deeper into the heart of this conversation: needs. If you want to understand yourself with honesty and clarity, start here. I'm not talking about needs you can brush aside. I mean the ones you carry every day, whether you realize it or not. These are the things you truly cannot live well without. When needs go unmet for too long, it's not just your energy that suffers. Your motivation, confidence, and ability to connect with others begin to unravel. Life feels heavier, and small challenges can seem overwhelming. Many of you may have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a psychological theory often taught in schools or personal development discussions. Even if the name is new, the idea will likely feel familiar. Picture a pyramid. At the base are your basic physical needs: air, food, water, sleep, shelter. These are non-negotiable. Without them, your mind and body go into survival mode. Next is safety, not just physical safety, but also financial security, health, and emotional stability. Above that come love and belonging, followed by esteem, and finally self-actualization at the top. Understanding this pyramid helps you see that when your basic needs aren't met, it's almost impossible to focus on higher goals. You can't build emotional or professional growth on an unstable foundation. Let's take a moment to think about a deeper drive in all of us: the desire to become the best version of yourself, whatever that means for you. Here's something interesting and very relevant today. Many of us live with our basic needs met. We have a roof over our heads, food in the fridge, and we're not constantly worried about physical danger. And yet, many people feel a strange emptiness or dissatisfaction, almost quietly inside. Why does this happen? It's because even if our basic physical needs are met, our emotional and psychological needs often are not. And these are just as important if we want to live fully, not just survive. Take connection as an example. We live in a world where it's easier than ever to send a message, share a photo, or have a video call. And yet, many people feel profoundly alone. Why? Because real connection, the kind that meets your need to feel seen, heard, and understood, cannot be replaced by digital interaction alone. We need emotional intimacy. We need deep conversations, presence, and trust. These things take time and attention. Scrolling through social media or reacting to posts does not satisfy these needs. When these needs are unmet, even if everything seems fine from the outside, your inner experience can feel empty or disconnected. Another important need is recognition. I don't mean fame or attention, but the basic human need to feel acknowledged. To feel that your efforts, struggles, and growth are noticed and valued. In the workplace, for example, people can work hard every day, meet deadlines, and still feel invisible. Over time, this leads to burnout because emotionally, something inside begins to shut down. Sometimes, our needs are dismissed by others or even by ourselves. We may have been taught, often unconsciously, that needing too much is a weakness, selfishness, or neediness. In some cultures, there's even a kind of silent pride in not needing anything. People are praised for being self-sufficient, for handling everything on their own. But here's the truth. No one is completely self-sufficient. Humans are social and emotional beings. To need care, affection, and affirmation is part of being alive. It's not a flaw. It's also important to remember that needs change over time. The needs you had at age May 20th be very different from the ones you feel at 30 or 40. Life circumstances change. You might move to a new country, lose a job, become a parent, fall in love, face illness, or grow older. With all these changes, your inner landscape shifts too. Sometimes needs become more subtle or complex. You may not even be able to name them immediately, but they still show up in how you react, relate to others, and feel at the end of the day. From a language learning perspective, being able to express your needs clearly is extremely powerful. Instead of saying, "I'm not okay," you can say, "I'm feeling overwhelmed because I need more clarity." Instead of, "I'm angry," you can say, "I need to feel respected in this conversation." These kinds of phrases give you emotional precision, a skill that takes time to develop, whether in your first language or in English. But once you have it, your communication becomes clearer, more honest, and more compassionate. Here are a few common phrases in English related to needs. Meeting a need. Fulfilling a need. Identifying unmet needs. Addressing basic needs. In more formal or professional contexts, you might hear, "Her emotional needs were not being acknowledged. His need for support was completely dismissed." Notice how often the passive voice is used when talking about things that have been ignored or forgotten. Using these patterns will help you sound fluent and natural, especially when discussing sensitive topics. So here's a question to reflect on. What's one need in your life right now that is quietly asking for attention? It doesn't have to shout. It doesn't have to demand. It's just quietly waiting for you to notice. Maybe it's the need for rest. Maybe it's the need for an honest conversation. Or maybe it's something else entirely. Take a moment to reflect. Sometimes the first step to feeling fulfilled is simply noticing what we need. Maybe the need you notice is for security, acceptance, or simply to be seen. Whatever it is, take a moment to name it. Naming it matters. Once something has a name, it can be understood. And once it's understood, it can be met. Now let's shift from needs to wishes, what you hope for. If needs are the ground beneath your feet, wishes are like the sky above your head. They represent the part of you that imagines, dreams, and looks forward. Unlike needs, wishes aren't essential for survival. But they're essential for meaning. Wishes carry hope, give you direction, and connect you with possibility. In English, we often express wishes using phrases like, "I wish I could," or "if only I had." These are ways of talking about things that aren't true, at least not yet. For example, "I wish I spoke Italian fluently." "I wish I had taken more risks in my 20s. These aren't statements of fact, they're expressions of longing. And longing is deeply human. It shows that something inside you is reaching for something just out of reach. I remember a time in my life when I was stuck in a routine that felt safe, but not inspiring. Every day looked almost the same: work, commute, obligations. Nothing was wrong, but nothing felt exciting either. Then I noticed a quiet thought that kept coming back. I wish I could work on something more meaningful. I wish I could build something of my own. It wasn't a loud demand. It didn't force immediate action. but it stayed with me quietly, like a soft song in the background. And eventually, that wish led me to take small, intentional steps. It didn't happen overnight. It started simply with imagining a different future. That's the power of wishing. Wishes give you a place to start. Of course, not every wish becomes reality. Some wishes are tied to fantasy. You might wish to live by the ocean, travel the world, be famous, or undo a past mistake. Some are realistic, some are not. But even the most impractical wish has value. It tells you something about your values, your desires, and what you find meaningful. For example, I wish I had more time. A longing for balance and space. I wish I could speak freely at work. A desire for safety and authenticity. Even small wishes matter. I wish I could sleep in tomorrow. I wish I were more confident. I wish I hadn't said that. These are quiet messages from your inner self. They reveal what matters to you, even if they seem simple or small. This is also where conditional thinking comes in. You might say, if I had more money, I'd quit my job. If I lived somewhere else, I'd be happier. These thoughts can motivate, but they can also trap you. If you always wait for the perfect condition, the perfect moment, the perfect situation, you might wait forever. There's a fine line between envisioning a better life and postponing the life you already have. Still, each of us carries a collection of wishes inside. Some are bold, some are quiet, some even come from childhood. And not all of them need to come true to serve a purpose. Just the act of imagining something better can be energizing. Wishing reminds you that change is possible. It tells you that you are not stuck. And maybe, just maybe, the life you want is closer than it seems, if you're willing to listen to your own heart and your own longing. From a language perspective, expressing wishes is one of the most beautiful areas of emotional fluency. You're not just learning grammar rules, you're learning how to share your deepest hopes, regrets, and dreams. For example, the phrase, "I wish I had," is often used to reflect on the past. It's a form of emotional storytelling, a way to look back and acknowledge something you didn't have or didn't do. On the other hand, "I wish I could," or "I wish I were," points to something you want in the present or future, something you don't yet have. These structures aren't just useful in conversation, they're also valuable in journaling, coaching, or even poetry. As you expand your vocabulary, try to reach for more expressive words. Instead of simply saying want, you could say long for, yearn for, dream of, envision. These words add color, depth, and texture to your speech, helping you communicate your inner world more clearly. Here's something to reflect on. What's one wish you've been carrying quietly, maybe for years, but haven't fully acknowledged? Maybe it's a lifestyle change, a relationship shift, a creative pursuit, the wish to forgive someone or even forgive yourself. Whatever it is, give yourself permission to imagine it. Don't plan it. Don't analyze it. Just sit with it and allow yourself to want it without shame. Wishing is not weakness. It's a form of self-recognition. It's how we begin to tell ourselves the truth about what we care about, even if we're not ready to act on it yet. Now let's move on to expectations, the invisible script we all carry. Expectations are like a quiet, invisible script running in the background of our lives. They shape how we think, how we act, how we judge others, and most importantly, how we judge ourselves. Unlike needs or wishes, expectations often feel like they just exist. We rarely stop to question where they came from or whether they really serve us. And yet, they shape our reality, sometimes in helpful ways, and sometimes in ways that quietly sabotage our well-being. At its core, an expectation is a belief about how things should be, how people should act, how life should unfold, or how you should feel at a certain age. That word should is really at the heart of what we're exploring. We often say things like, I should be more productive. He should have known better. By now, I should have figured it out. These statements sound reasonable, but they carry invisible pressure. They create a constant sense that something isn't enough. Many expectations are not ones we consciously chose. They're internalized over time, shaped by culture, family, education, religion, and media. For example, success means financial security. Real men don't cry. You must always put others first. Maybe nobody said these things directly, but they were there between the lines, and over time they became part of your inner script. One listener shared this with me. I was raised to believe that if I wasn't constantly achieving something, I was wasting my potential. That belief wasn't chosen, it was passed down, almost like a family heirloom. But as an adult, it began to feel heavy, exhausting, even harmful. She constantly felt like she was falling short, no matter how hard she worked. And that's exactly what expectations can do. They can create a gap between who we are and who we think we're supposed to be, a gap that feels impossible to close. In professional life, expectations can feel even heavier. You're expected to be efficient, ambitious, emotionally intelligent, collaborative, independent, all at the same time. And, depending on your background or industry, there may also be unspoken rules about how you should speak, dress, react, or perform. If you don't fit that model perfectly, you might start questioning your own value, even if you're doing your job well. When these expectations are unrealistic or clash with your personal values, that's when stress, anxiety, and self-doubt start to creep in. Expectations aren't only external. Often, the harshest ones come from within ourselves. I should be better by now. I should never make mistakes. I should always be in control. These inner expectations come from a desire to live up to some ideal. And when we don't, we feel guilty, ashamed, or unworthy. We compare ourselves to others online, to our younger selves, or to imagined versions of who we think we should have become. But here's the thing. How often do we ask ourselves, is this expectation fair? Is it realistic? Is it even mine? From a language point of view, expectations often show up through modal verbs of obligation, words like should, must, have to, ought to. For example, you must be polite. I should exercise more. We're supposed to finish this by Friday. These phrases are common in both formal and informal English, and they often reflect an underlying rule or social norm. But just because something is commonly expected doesn't mean it's right for everyone. One person's success might be another person's burnout. We also use idiomatic expressions for expectations. Trying to live up to their parents' standards. Fell short of their goals. These phrases show the gap between what was expected and what actually happened, a gap that often carries disappointment, frustration, or shame. Expectations also affect relationships. We expect friends to understand us, partners to support us, colleagues to cooperate. And when reality doesn't match the story in our heads, conflict often follows. Often, these expectations are unspoken. And that's where trouble starts. As the saying goes, unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments. Harsh, but true. So, what can we do with all of this? The first step is noticing. Notice when a sentence in your mind includes the word should. Ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Is it really mine? Does it help me or hold me back? You don't need to throw away all expectations. Some are healthy. They guide your behavior, help you set goals, and push you to grow. But many, especially unconscious ones inherited from others, might be running your life without your permission. Here's something to reflect on. What's one expectation you're carrying right now that feels more like a burden than motivation? And if you could rewrite that part of your inner script, what would you choose instead? Now let's turn even more inward to something we all experience: internal dialogue. This is the quiet, or sometimes very loud, voice in your head. The one that comments, judges, questions, criticizes, worries, replays the past, or imagines the future. In simple terms, it's how you talk to yourself. And how you speak to yourself matters far more than many people realize. Ask yourself, when was the last time you really listened to your inner voice? Not just what it was saying, but how it was saying it. Was it kind? Was it patient? Or was it frustrated, harsh, or dismissive? Our internal dialogue plays a huge role in shaping our emotions, decisions, and relationships. And yet, most of it happens automatically, without us noticing. We don't always stop to ask ourselves, why am I speaking to myself this way? Where did this voice even come from? The truth is, your internal dialogue is shaped heavily by your past, especially the messages you absorbed when you were young. Maybe you grew up hearing things like, "Don't be lazy. That's not good enough. You're too sensitive." Even if nobody says these things to you now, they might still live in your mind, repeated in your own voice. Psychologists call these limiting beliefs ideas we've accepted as truth, even when they hold us back. Some examples. I'll never be confident. I'm not creative. People like me don't succeed. Limiting beliefs aren't always obvious. They often hide inside our thoughts as facts, especially during stress or moments of doubt. Imagine you're preparing for an interview and a voice in your head says, "Don't mess this up." You always freeze when you're nervous. It may sound like a warning, but really, it's fear disguised as logic. Or maybe you think, "I'm just not the kind of person who can take risks." In reality, that's just a story you've told yourself, a protective narrative built from past experiences. This brings us to reactive versus reflective inner responses. A reactive response happens automatically. It's quick, emotional, and often critical. It says things like, "Why did I say that? I'm so stupid. This always happens. I'm a failure." A reflective response is slower, more conscious, and more compassionate. It might sound like, "I didn't handle that perfectly, but I'm learning. That was uncomfortable, but it doesn't define me." The difference isn't just in the language, it's in the emotional impact. Reactive responses create shame, while reflective responses build resilience. So, how do we shift from reactive to reflective? Notice. Pay attention to the tone of your inner voice. Is it supportive or critical? Does it sound like someone you trust or someone you'd rather avoid? One powerful exercise: ask yourself, if I spoke to a friend the way I speak to myself, how would they feel? The truth is, many of us are far more compassionate toward others than toward ourselves. Let's look at some words that often appear in our internal dialogue. Should, always, never enough. I should be further along. I never get it right. This isn't good enough. These words are emotionally loaded and often don't reflect reality, they reflect fear. Now imagine replacing those words with nurturing language. Trying, growing, learning, processing. I'm learning to handle situations like this better instead of "I always screw this up." That tiny shift can change your emotional state and your outcomes. From a language perspective, internal dialogue is rich territory for building emotive vocabulary. Try describing your inner voice with words like harsh, judgmental, cold, anxious, rigid. Or, on the other hand, encouraging, forgiving, kind, wise, curious. These adjectives help you analyze not just what you're thinking, but the quality of your thinking. Embedded questions can also deepen reflection. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" which often leads to shame, try asking, "What am I believing about myself right now? What might I need in this moment?" Notice how different those questions feel. All of this takes practice. Learning to listen to your inner voice with awareness and slowly adjusting it is a long-term process. It's not about forcing yourself to be positive all the time. It's about creating space for a voice that is honest and compassionate, a voice that helps you grow instead of keeping you stuck. Here's something to reflect on. What does your internal dialogue sound like in moments of stress? How would it change if it came from care instead of criticism? And most importantly, what kind of inner voice do you want to develop, not just for yourself, but for the person you're becoming? Finally, let's talk about misalignment. By now, you've probably noticed that needs, wishes, and expectations don't always work in harmony. Some of the most difficult moments in life, the confusing, frustrating, or even painful ones, often come from misalignment between these three forces. And that's exactly what we're going to explore next. Let's talk about what it feels like when your needs, dreams, and expectations, whether placed on you by yourself or by others, are out of sync. Imagine a scenario. There's someone in a high-paying, stable job. People see them as successful, respected, impressive. They've checked all the boxes, done what was expected. On the outside, everything looks perfect. But inside, something feels restless, empty, or numb. They might think, "I should be happy. I have everything people say I'm supposed to want." And yet, deep down, they feel drained or disconnected. Why? Because their emotional needs, maybe for creativity, autonomy, or purpose, aren't being met. Their wish might be to do something more fulfilling, something that aligns with their values. But their expectation, whether from society or themselves, is that they should stay because that's what responsible adults do. They're caught in the middle. This is a classic example of cognitive dissonance. That's a psychological term for the mental discomfort we feel when our beliefs, desires, or actions contradict each other. It's that uncomfortable tension when you say one thing but feel another, or when your actions go in one direction while your heart pulls you in another. And it doesn't just happen with career decisions. Think about relationships. Someone might need emotional safety, but they stay in a partnership that doesn't offer it. Why? Maybe they expect love to be unconditional, maybe they feel they should stay for the kids, or maybe they wish things would magically improve. Here, the need is at odds with the hope, and the expectation complicates the decision even more. It's like trying to walk in three directions at once. Misalignment can also lead to burnout. You might keep pushing to meet deadlines, achieve goals, or care for others. Even when your body is asking for rest or your mind is begging for a break, the expectation to keep going becomes louder than the voice inside saying, "Slow down." And even if your wish is to live a more balanced life, reality feels off rhythm because nothing has been recalibrated. What makes this even trickier is that our modern culture often confuses wishes with expectations. We're told, implicitly or explicitly, if you want it badly enough, you should achieve it. Your dreams should lead to success. Hard work must lead to happiness. But life is rarely that simple. Not all dreams are practical, and not all effort is rewarded the way we hope. When we treat wishes like promises rather than possibilities, disappointment becomes inevitable. So, how can you recognize misalignment between your needs, wishes, and expectations? One big clue is emotional. Feelings like frustration, indecision, and guilt often signal that something is out of place. If you constantly feel stuck, unable to move forward, yet unwilling to stay where you are, that's a sign of internal conflict. If you ask yourself, "Why can't I be satisfied with what I have?" it might mean that your outer life reflects expectations, but not your true needs or wishes. Pay attention to the language you use in these moments. You might say, "I know I should be grateful, but I'm not." Or, "I want to leave, but I can't." These are signals from your inner world telling you that something isn't aligned. Understanding this misalignment is the first step. Once you notice it, you can start recalibrating, paying attention to what you truly need, honoring your wishes, and examining which expectations serve you and which hold you back. When these three needs, wishes, and expectations start moving in harmony, life feels lighter, more energized, and more authentic. Sometimes, even when your life looks stable and successful on the outside, something inside feels off. You might find yourself saying things like, "I feel like I should be happy, but I can't. I thought this would make me happy, but it doesn't." These sentences show contrast, and contrast often reveals truth. Even if others see you as successful, you might feel unfulfilled. Even if your life looks aligned, it may not feel aligned inside. This is where self-awareness becomes essential. When you notice this inner tension, try to slow down and reflect. Ask yourself, what need is not being met right now? What wish am I quietly holding on to? Which expectation am I trying to live up to that may be too heavy? The answers might not come immediately, and that's okay. Simply asking the questions creates space for clarity. From a language perspective, these moments are perfect for practicing contrastive expressions and phrasal verbs. Phrases like at odds with, caught between, push through, burn out, settle for carry both meaning and emotional nuance. For example, I felt caught between what I wanted and what was expected of me. This sentence is more than grammatically correct. It's full of meaning. And meaning is what makes language stick. Here's a reflection. Is there a part of your life where your needs, wishes, and expectations feel out of sync? If so, what's one small step you could take to bring them closer together? It doesn't need to be a huge decision. Even naming the tension is powerful. Once you recognize the pattern, you're no longer trapped. You can begin writing a new script, one that is honest, compassionate, and aligned with who you truly are. Reclaiming alignment, conscious intention, and self-kindness. Once you recognize the misalignment between your needs, wishes, and expectations, the next step is to reclaim your balance and authenticity. This isn't about perfection or quick fixes. It's about making conscious choices, choices that reflect your true values, not just automatic reactions or external pressures. Reclaiming alignment starts with self-awareness. It means tuning in to your internal dialogue, to your body, and to your emotions. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? What am I hoping for? What am I expecting from myself or others? Developing this habit of mindful reflection is the foundation for meaningful change. It creates space where transformation becomes possible. But self-awareness alone isn't enough. Once you see the gaps or tensions inside, you need to practice setting boundaries. Boundaries might feel uncomfortable at first. They might feel selfish, especially if you're used to prioritizing others or meeting expectations at your own expense. But boundaries are a vital form of self-kindness. They're how you say to yourself, "This is what I need to thrive, and I'm committed to protecting it." Boundaries can look like saying no more often, carving out time for rest, creativity, or reflection, asking for support when needed. Each boundary you set is a step toward realigning your life with what truly matters. Small intentional changes accumulate over time, leading to profound shifts. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. Maybe you'll start journaling once a week to clarify your wishes. Maybe you'll take one evening free of work emails, giving your mind and body space to rest. These actions are more than routines, they are declarations of intention. They signal to your brain and heart that you're serious about reclaiming your agency. From a language perspective, this is also a great moment to notice the power of empowering verbs. Words that encourage action and control over your life, like reclaim, realign, reset, commit, embrace, nurture. For example, I will reclaim my time. I'm working on realigning my priorities. I'm ready to reset my boundaries. Using this kind of language is not just grammatically correct, it's emotionally powerful. It reinforces action, choice, and agency, which is exactly what this stage of self-awareness is about. Notice how the verbs we've been using focus not just on what happens, but on what you can do. They invite you to step into the role of an active creator of your life. Future forms are especially helpful here. When you say, "I will choose to honor my needs," or "I'm going to practice self-kindness every day," you're not only planning for the future, you're also affirming your commitment in the present. This kind of language can make your goals feel more real, more tangible, and more achievable. Don't forget the power of gerunds and infinitives to describe your process. You might say, "I'm learning to listen to myself." "I'm committing to setting boundaries," or "I'm choosing to prioritize rest." These forms show that reclaiming alignment is an ongoing journey, not a one-time event. As you take these steps, remember to practice self-kindness. Change is rarely linear, and setbacks or doubts will almost always arise. When that happens, speak to yourself with the same compassion you would offer a dear friend. Instead of, "I failed again," try, "I'm learning and every effort counts." This nurturing approach builds resilience and opens the door to deeper transformation. Here's a question to carry forward. What small, intentional action can you take today to realign with your true needs, wishes, or expectations? It might be taking a deep breath, writing down one boundary you want to set, or reminding yourself that your worth is not defined by what you produce. Every small step is an act of reclaiming your inner harmony, an act of kindness toward the person you are becoming. Living in alignment isn't about perfection. It's about authenticity, courage, and grace. It's about embracing your complexity, honoring your journey, and moving forward with intention and care. As we come to the close of this episode, take a moment, maybe even a deep breath, and sit with what we've explored today. Understanding your needs, wishes, and expectations isn't simple. It's a journey that calls for patience, curiosity, and kindness toward yourself. Pause and reflect gently. You might want to journal or just hold these questions in your mind. When was the last time you really checked in with yourself? What needs have been quietly waiting for your attention? Which wishes have been nudging at the edges of your awareness, too fragile or bold to express aloud? What expectations, whether from family, society, or yourself, have felt heavy or limiting? It's normal if you don't have all the answers right now. Sometimes just asking the questions is the first step toward transformation. You may find it helpful to revisit this episode or listen again slowly, letting the words sink in. Language is a powerful tool for understanding both the world and yourself. Words like reclaim, realign, limiting beliefs, caught in the middle, aren't just vocabulary, they're keys to expressing your inner life. Consider talking with someone you trust, a friend, mentor, or fellow learner. Conversations about these topics deepen insight, offer new perspectives, and remind you that you're not alone in facing these universal challenges. After all, the tension between needs, wishes, and expectations is something everyone experiences in their own way. Before we finish, here's a gentle challenge. Over the next week, observe your internal dialogue. Notice how you speak to yourself in moments of stress, joy, or indecision. Ask, is my inner voice supportive or critical? Does it reflect my values and needs, or old expectations I've carried without noticing? Small moments of awareness, reflection, and gentle adjustment can help you realign, reclaim, and nurture the life you truly want to live. That constant stream of thoughts and feelings running through your mind, your internal dialogue, is always there, whether you notice it or not. Try to observe it gently. Notice when your needs are being met, when your wishes spark your imagination, and when expectations feel heavy, like a script you're trying to follow. When you become aware of these moments, practice responding with kindness and curiosity, rather than judgment. You might ask yourself, what is this trying to tell me? How can I honor this part of myself today? Remember, this isn't about changing everything at once. It's about taking small, intentional steps toward living more authentically, steps that help you reconnect with what truly matters. In doing this, you reclaim your personal power, your resilience, and your capacity for transformation. Thank you for tuning in to Fluent English Journey. I hope this episode has sparked meaningful reflections and given you language tools to express your journey with more confidence. If this episode was helpful, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit or leaving a comment to share your thoughts. Your voice and experiences matter deeply. Until next time. Keep listening to your inner voice. Keep asking questions. And above all, keep being kind to yourself. Understanding your needs, wishes, and expectations is one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself. And the more you nurture that gift, the more it grows and strengthens over time. Take care, and I'll see you next time.